And we are back. Backpack Sports Zone. Your host, Peter Pac-Man Clark, a.k.a. the Sports God. We're here for another week of great New York sports, as we got a lot to talk about in a short period of time. And Sunday being pretty much a historic day. It was the first time that the Mets, the Jets, the Yankees, the Giants all won in the same day since 2009. That's right. You heard it right. 13 years since those four teams have all won in the same day. So it was a very rare, extremely good day for New York fans, as they were able to really go off on last Sunday. And since last Sunday, it's been fun as a New York sports fan. You've been able to talk about how the Yankees, Mets have progressed. You're 2-0 as a Giants fan. You got a big comeback win as a Jets. So a good amount to talk about. And obviously, I'm going to throw in the Braves in there as they're challenging the Mets. And I will talk about how bad the Titans have been. But I'm also going to talk a little bit about boxing and how Canelo pretty much dominated this past week, and the upcoming fight tonight with Shakur Stevenson in Newark for all the people out there in New Jersey. So, just to get right into it, is obviously there's so much stuff to talk about, but we have to start off with the New York Giants. And not only can you say it's the New York Giants, but you have to say the undefeated New York Giants, as the New York Giants found a way to win a game against the Carolina Panthers. It was a game that they didn't play that well, to be honest with you. It was a game that Baker Mayfield and Daniel Jones pretty much see who could play the worst at quarterback, as neither one played really well. But I have to say, it was just a good win for a Giants period, just to be 2-0. Can you remember the last time they were 2-0 to start the season? But Jones wasn't good. Saquon was average at best. They didn't really open up much holes for him. He broke maybe one run the entire game. But the defense played very well. That's the shining crown, is that you still don't have your two main pass rushers, and the defense is actually playing well. Sometimes in the NFL, you just got to win games like this. And the one thing you come out of this game saying is that you won a game, you're 2-0, you're one of only 6 teams I think it's 6 teams left that's 2-0 of all of NFL. But Daniel Jones is still not the guy. And that's something that you definitely have to know, that he's just not that guy. His field vision is just horrible. There was numerous times where instead, when he got a little bit of pass rush, before they even touched him, he was almost shaking to get out of the way. He was putting his head down and looking for a place to run, and he didn't keep his eyes down the field. And they pointed out a couple plays on TV where he had good 20-yard gains with wide receivers wide open. And instead, before he took the sack, I'm not talking about after you have a hand on him and he's being spun around, of course you can't get it to him, but before a person actually put their hands on him, there's people open, but he doesn't see him. And it's because he's it's kind of like what Sam Darnold said a couple years ago, and everybody got on him. He's seeing ghosts. That's pretty much what it is. He's anticipating getting hit, and it's not a good thing as an NFL quarterback, because you got to be able to feel the rush. You got to be able to get hit, still throw the ball. You can't be clinching. You can't be just fearing away from the pass rush. And that's what he did last week. I think he had like 150 yards. He didn't play well last week. The point is that he's not the future of the Giants. This is the last year, and I know that there's been some people say, well, maybe, they're 2-0. You just keep him. It's not going to happen. If you keep him for another year, it's going to set the franchise back a couple more years, because you've got a lot of decisions to make this offseason. You got Saquon in the last year of his deal. You got Daniel Jones in his last year of his deal. And those two positions will shape the offense, because I have no idea what they're doing with Galladay right now. It's amazing that he can't even get on the field. So I really have no idea what they're doing with him. They asked him after the game, like, what's going on? Or maybe does he think he should be on the field for this situation? And he said he should be on the field all the time. And I agree. He's their best wide receiver. But I think the biggest issue is him as Daniel Jones, because when he has a good QB, they have to have QBs and wide receivers have to have a trust within each other. And they have to be able to sometimes trust them to throw in the coverage. When they have one-on-one coverage, they're guarded, but they're not guarded. And Kenny Galladay is one of those guys. You got to kind of force feed him the ball a little bit. He's such a big guy. I think he's 6'3", about 220, 230, around that rate, 220. So you got to force him the ball because he's big enough to win one-on-one and contested battles to get the catch. But Jones, as I said, he's afraid to pass rush. He's afraid to throw interceptions. He doesn't throw the ball up for his wide receiver. So it's very hard to have the quarterback be successful when he really is looking to not make mistakes. And you understand not wanting to make mistakes, but you got to take some type of charge of that offense. You got to say, all right, if I make a mistake, all right, I'm going to make it up next time. It's like he feels like if he makes one mistake that he's going to get benched or something. Who knows? Maybe he will, but I doubt it. But the point is that he's just got to play better, or this streak of 2 straight wins is going to come to an end really fast. Because next week they play against the Dallas Cowboys, and obviously they do not have Dak Prescott. It will be Cooper Rush leading that offense. So the defense, once again, has to step it up. They have to take advantage of not going against a true starting quarterback and hold Dallas to, I would say, under 17 points. I think that's going to be the key number between the two. I think if you can hold them under 17 points, then you'll win. And I know that seems like a low number, but I don't think the Giants are going to score that many points either. The Dallas defense isn't that bad. I think they're actually pretty good. I think they're a top 10 defense or around that range. And Daniel Jones is gonna have to find a way to get over his in pocket, running out of pocket, putting his eyes down issue, because if he does that this game, it'll be a low scoring game, but they'll lose the game. They got to find some way to get the ball out of his hands and actually produce when he gets a pass rush. And that's the biggest thing for them right now. If he doesn't do that, then it's going to be a very awkward Monday night for the Giants, it's always a fun game when it's the Giants versus Cowboys, and it's going to be at MetLife. So fans I'll tell you this, the New York fans don't usually like primetime games, but when it's against the Cowboys, it doesn't matter. They got to find some way. You don't want to they're already not happy being out there. They only like 1 o'clock games, so they don't really like being out there late. You don't want to get them even more pissed off having them out there late and then have them lose to your biggest rival, the Dallas Cowboys, at home. So good luck to the Giants this week and playing Dallas. Moving on to the other New York team, the New York Jets. Now, the New York Jets have found a way. I don't know how they did it last week, because with a minute 22, they scored 2 touchdowns in the last minute 22. They were able to receive get an onside kick, which Amari Cooper took the blame for. He took responsibility for. He says he should have had it, and he should have had it. But just finding a way to win that game. Joe Flacco is playing really well right now. He had a second straight 300-yard game. He had 4 touchdown passes. It was pretty much a coming out party for Garrett Wilson, and he had 8 catches for 102 and 2 touchdowns, including the game winner. Even Breece Hall got involved. He had 50 yards rushing, another 10 receiving, but the 10 receiving was important because it was a receiving touchdown. And this is a game that, honestly, if you're looking at it from the outside, you would say more Cleveland blew it than the Jets won it. However, listen, between the deep pass to Corey Davis to get the first touchdown, getting the onside kick, and then getting Garrett Wilson the touchdown, I mean, you got to give the Jets credit for that. That's a great comeback, no matter how you look at it. You may want to disparage it, saying, oh, they shouldn't have won, that Cleveland should have closed the doors on them. But you know what? You got to give the Jets heart for not quitting in that game. A lot of people, I was watching that game, and a lot of people gave up on the Jets. They said, turn the TV off. They said, the game's over. And the Jets never quit. And that's something that Robert Saleh has installed in them, and that's a big thing for a coach. A lot of people, they try to talk about coaches with their X's and O's, or are their offense good, is their defense good? The biggest things that you really have to do as a head coach is you have to be able to motivate your team to keep going, to not quit. And if you can do that, you'll be fine. Your talent will come along. You'll get offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator of your choice. And it's kind of the same situation that's going on in Tennessee, and I'll get to them in a second. Mike Vrabel. You can't really blame him himself for an offense or defense, because his job is to watch the entire team. His job is to make sure people are motivated. His job is to make sure people don't quit. And that's what Robert Saleh has done with the Jets in the past 2 games. I mean, the first game didn't look good. However, they didn't quit in that game. There was certain plays in that game that made the game get away from them. Because, like I said, it was a one-score game at halftime, and it was just the first couple drives coming out of the half. The offense didn't move the ball. Baltimore got it back, scored 2 touchdowns, and that put the game away. But it wasn't about quitting. It wasn't about anything like that. It was just their Jets are on their way, and you can see it. They have it. The biggest question they're going to have is now when Zach Wilson comes back, which could be week 4, could be week 5. It's looking like it'll either be 4 or 5 for his return. If Joe Flacco is still playing this well, can you really bench him? I mean, he's gotten 300 yards the first 2 games. He had 4 touchdowns in this game. It's tough to bench him after he's playing this well and the Jets as a team is playing this well. Let's say he has another game, have another 300-yard game, then let's say the Jets lose. Let's say the Jets lose a close one to Cincinnati because they're playing at Cincinnati, and Joe Flacco throws for 300 yards, 2 to 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. How do you bench him right now for Zach Wilson when he's playing that well and the team offense is playing that well? That's going to be a very interesting thing to see what happens by the time that he comes out of this, because I mean, it's tough. It'll be really tough to bench him knowing that, listen, the offense is moving right now. And you got Corey Davis and Garrett Wilson, 2 good wide receivers on the outside. You got Moore on the slot. You got Berrios, who comes in as a 4th wide receiver. You got 2 good backs in Michael Carter and Breece Hall. You got your tight ends with Uzuma and with Conklin, and you have a good offensive line, and that's why Flacco's actually playing well, is because they have a good offensive line. That offense just needs the quarterback to play well. If the quarterback plays well, and I said this in the preseason, that's all they need is a good quarterback. If they had a top 10 quarterback, they can run in the playoffs. That's how good the offense looks on paper. So if the quarterback is playing well, I mean, can you really bench him right now to make sure the second-year pro gets his balls off on the team? I mean, that's a tough decision to make. That'll be for Robert Saleh to make. He obviously has a good judge of the team to see how it feels for that situation. But that's a really tough situation, if you ask me. I couldn't do it. That's why he's going to get paid the big bucks. But with that said, I mentioned earlier about Mike Vrabel and the Tennessee Titans. And the Tennessee Titans right now are playing like garbage, just flat out like garbage. Last week, they got completely blown out, 41-7 to the Buffalo Bills, in a game that was 7-7. let me mention that. The game was 7-7, and they lost 41-7. That is just an embarrassment out there. Taylor Lewan got hurt early in the game. He was out for the year. They just looked really bad. The injury also looked bad because it was a non-contact injury, and obviously most football fans know what non-contact injuries is either an ACL, MCL, or PCL. And PCL only keep you out a couple weeks. MCL keep you out maybe about a month or month and a half. ACL end the year. And if it does end the year, and the Titans are being very close to the chest with it because they haven't really given a timeline or even said what the injury is with Taylor Lewan. If it is an ACL, and there have been some people that have claimed they think it will be, that could be his last snap ever with the Tennessee Titans, as his contract is a very big contract, and I'll talk about that in a second, but he's got a big contract. He's been hurt a lot for the past couple years, and I just don't see them putting him back there if he's out for the year. I don't see him starting again at left tackle for the Titans. So it's one of those situations where, as a Titans fan, it's tough to see one of the guys who's been really good for you for years be hurt. But you also have to look at it smartly and say, you know what? He's hurt. If you keep you're wasting money if you're going to pay him $15, $20 million or $25 million to keep going out there and be hurt. And then you have to sign somebody else anyway. And right now they don't have to put Daly out there at left tackle. It's just disgraceful. It was horrible. That John Robinson has not done a good job of fulfilling the depth here. He didn't even do a good job at doing all the entire starters on the offensive line. So he has to really be the one to take the blame for most of this right now. One thing he did good is he drafted Treylon Burks. Treylon Burks once again looked well out there. Kyle Phillips had another muff punt as he fumbled again for the second straight game. Derrick Henry didn't really have any holes to run. You got to stop doing pitches with him and sweeps to the outside. Every time Tennessee Titans fan can see that. I don't know why the offense coordinator Todd Downing can't. But listen, Henry right now is in a situation where, and I said this, if they lose the next 2 games, I think you do have to entertain trading Derrick Henry, especially if you can get a first-round pick, and I think you may be able to. But if you can get a low first-round pick for him, I think you do have to entertain trading him, because eventually you have to modernize this offense. This offense is so stone-aged right now. It's just run, pass. And even if you don't run, pass, which obviously every Tennessee Titan fan knows what I'm talking about, you have an offense that can't come from behind because you have no speed on the outside. You have a running back that is an all-time great, but the offense is centered around him. You look at all the teams that go to the Super Bowl, their team is not centered around a running back. It's centered around passing offense. You have to be a modern passing offense. The Titans have built their team completely different than any other team. Now, obviously, you want to have an offense. That's what the NFL is about right now. If you don't have a good offense, it makes it extremely hard to get you into the Super Bowl. Looking at that, the Titans' defense is better than their offense. Then on offense, you pass the ball. When you're able to pass the ball, then you're able to come from behind if you go down. You're able to put teams away if you go up early. The Titans are a running team, so most of their games are going to be close, and it wears you down. And one thing I want to talk about really quick before I move on to baseball and maybe even the game last night is that the Titans defense is playing horribly bad right now. But they didn't really change guys from last year. Yes, Harold Landry is hurt. He's not playing. Yes, Christian Fulton is hurt. He didn't play in week 2. Questionable if he's going to play in week 3. But the biggest thing about them is I don't think their heart is in it. And if you think about it, you're a defense that was a top 10 defense last year. You played like you were a championship defense for the last month of the season when Bud Dupree came back and everybody was playing. You went out there in the playoff game and got 9 sacks. And the offense, not only could the offense not win the game after you get 9 sacks, only give up 1 touchdown at home with the AFC Championship and in the next around the corner at home again. Not only did you not win that game, and honestly, it's the offense fault, and everybody knows that. But then in the offseason, you go and trade the only guy that actually played well in that playoff game. As A.J. Brown went off, he had the lone touchdown. He had 100, I think it was like 150 yards on touchdown in that game. He went off in that game. And you trade him at whatever age he is, 25 years old. You trade him away when he was the only guy that played well on offensive side of the ball in a playoff game that you lost as the number 1 seed. If you were on defense and that just happened, what is your mentality? Like, if that's me, I'm saying your head is completely out of it. Because if we couldn't win it with that guy, A.J. Brown, on the team and playing his ass off in the playoff game, how do you expect us to think we can win it now without him on that offensive side of the ball? And I think that's really leading to mental breakdowns on defense. People don't just forget how to tackle. That's something that if you've watched a player after a couple years, people don't forget how to tackle. However, people have memory loss and memory gas and are thinking about other things, or their heart is in it, and things happen. And I think that's one of the issues that is happening with the Tennessee Titans right now. I just don't see them turning it around. Obviously, they could win this weekend against the Raiders, who are also 0-2. Then they play against the Indianapolis Colts, who are also bad. So they may have I think at the end of the year, they may have a better record than the team they are. But either way you look at it, the Titans are not in a good situation right now. They need to get a left tackle. They need to let Dylan Radins play, because you've been hearing about Dylan Radins for years, and he's been on the team for 2 years. This is his 3rd year. It's time for him to start now, because if he can't start, this is the 2nd year. If he can't start now, after he's had the whole offseason to get ready, they say the left side is his natural position, being at left tackle. If he can't play now at left tackle, to at least throw him in the water, see if he swims. If he swims, then you got your left tackle for 10 years. You don't have to worry about it. If he doesn't, you got to get a left tackle in the offseason. You can't let this go another year with him on the team thinking that he may get a starting spot if he plays well in the offseason. You got to solidify your offensive line. And if you don't solidify your offensive line, you're going to, one, make it bad for Malik Willis when he finally starts next year. And two, you're once again just plugging holes with paper mache. And you've got to change some things if you want to actually win in today's NFL if you're a Titans fan right now. But moving on to baseball, the New York Yankees, and obviously that's the big story in New York. Not just that the team has been up and down. They won 2 in a row, then they won 4 in a row since we last spoke last Friday. But the obvious story is about Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge has 60 home runs now. To my surprise, which I remember mentioning last week, I did not mind holding myself accountable. He has caught up and taken the lead in batting average. So he is now in the position to win the Triple Crown, as he's already put away RBIs. He's up by like 11 or 12 RBIs. He's obviously put away home runs because he's up by 20 home runs. So the one spot left for him to win the Triple Crown is batting average. And he is now up to 316 as he has been on fire this past week. Second place right now is 313 with Xander Bogaerts of the Boston Red Sox. And my prediction for tonight is that I think Aaron Judge will hit number 61 off the Red Sox, his hated rival, in New York on a Friday night. And then I think he will hit number 62 on Sunday Night Baseball, once again against the hated Boston Red Sox in New York. I think those are the two games. I think you almost have to do it at home, right? I mean, it wouldn't feel right if he does it on the road. He has to do it at home. And that's why the ticket prices are skyrocketing for the New York Yankees right now. But I just think that right now, Yankees are playing up and down, and I think Aaron Judge is kind of covering that up. So they've won, obviously, again, 4 in a row after they lost 2 to the Milwaukee when we spoke last Friday. And I think Aaron Judge right now is just the guy that everybody wants to see. Right now, he's the most exciting guy to watch in baseball because every time he comes up, you think it could be number 61, and then you think it could be number 62. And this is the record. I mean, obviously Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire, and Sammy Sosa have all gone over 61, but obviously all 3 of them have been tied to steroid use or performance-enhancing drug use. That has never happened with Aaron Judge so far as of yet, and hopefully it's not, because you like to see something like this to you haven't seen a home run chase like this since 98. In 98, everybody was following McGwire and Sosa, going back and forth. You saw how fun it was watching them. And it's been kind of the same way over the past week or so with Aaron Judge, especially when he had 2 games where he hit 2 home runs in the past couple weeks. And he started getting really hot in terms of really getting locked in. And I think he's at that point where he's going to finally get to tie it tonight, tie Roger Maris. Right now he's tied with Babe Ruth. And then I think he finally will top it and hit 62 at some point this weekend. So it's just going to be a fun story to continue to watch on to. The Yankees right now, in terms of their team, is kind of secondary. You know they're going to make the playoffs. You know there's not really much to say about them. It's kind of the same situation I said last week. It's still going to be a problem with their bullpen when it comes down to it. Last night, you saw it. They gave up a 3-run home run, which gave up the lead. Went from up 3-1 to down 4-3. So it's still going to be the same situation. Problems with their bullpen, problems with their closer. But they've had some exciting games this week because obviously when Judge hit number 60, you had Giancarlo Stanton right after that hit a grand slam to win the game. Obviously, like I said, you talked about Judge a couple weeks ago. They hit 2 home runs to even put him at that. That was on Sunday also. So you had a very good week of Yankee games that whether they won or lost, it was fun to watch them. So during this, specifically during this 4-game win streak that they're on right now. So they hope to continue that tonight against the Boston Red Sox again. As I said, I think Judge will hit number 61, but you'll have to watch and see. And after that, they go on the road. So if he can't hit it within these next 3 games, unfortunately for the New York fans, you won't be catching that. I think they said it could be somewhere between 1 million and 5 million for this baseball when he hits number 62. Well, actually, no, I think they said this one 1 million, and then the last home run that he hits for the year will be around 5 million. So, you got to find a way to get this baseball. You got to bring your glove to the stadium tonight, and hopefully he hits this one. That'll be worth probably about 250 or 500,000. Don't trade it in for the autograph and the signed ball. Just try to get a little bit more out of one of the most richest franchises in history. But with that said, moving on to the New York Mets. The Mets have won 5 in a row until their last game last night against the Milwaukee Brewers. Before that, not last night, but 2 nights ago. But before that, they had won 5 in a row, matching the Braves, who won 5 in a row also. In my opinion right now for the Mets, it's just don't get swept. That's pretty much the situation right now is don't get swept by the Braves when you play them next week. If you're looking at the schedule for them right now, and they're playing against the Oakland Athletics, who are 55 and 95. Then they go against Miami, who's 61 and 89. Then they play the Braves, obviously, and then they play Washington to end the season at 52 and 97. So you're playing 3 of the worst teams in the sport for these last few games, other than the Braves. You look at the Braves, and they also play Miami. They also play Washington, but it's about the current series. And the current series, they're going against the Philadelphia Phillies, who beat them last night. The Philadelphia Phillies are 20 games over 500. They're a good team. They're a team that can beat the Braves on any given night. They know the Braves well, and they're fighting on their own to try to get a playoff spot. So you have the Mets and Braves right now going against teams that are complete opposites. Oakland is drawing 2,000 people in their stadium at home. They're not a good team. And they're about to be moved probably to the West Coast somewhere, whether it's, they're on the West Coast, but they're going to be moved probably to Vegas in a couple years. So that's a horrible team. The Braves are playing against a team that's fighting for a playoff spot in 20 games over 500. Pretty much, in my opinion, after this weekend, because you got them playing the Phillies for 3 more games, and you got obviously with the Mets finishing out their series against Oakland. They have their 3-game series against Oakland. The Mets, I think, will probably win all 3. At worst, 2 out of 3. The Braves are going to have to fight to win 2 out of their last 3. Like I said, after losing last night, they got to fight to win 2 out of 3. And I'll get to them in a second because they also have other issues with Acuna being hurt and everything like that. But it's pretty much coming down to as long as the Mets play against these bad teams the way they should, I think the Mets will win the NL East. As long as they don't get swept next Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights against the Atlanta Braves in Atlanta next week. And that's going to be the series everybody's going to watch because right now it looks like the Mets have it set up that DeGrom will pitch. Max will pitch, I think, the first game, and DeGrom pitches the second game. Bassett pitches the third game. So they have their top pitchers lined up for that series. So it's very, very doubtful that they're going to get swept for that series. So the Mets are in a good position right now, up by a game and a half right now. I don't think anything is going to go crazy with them, but if they have had some slip-ups against these bad teams, and if they continue to lose to these bad teams, they lost a couple times to the Marlins. They're losing teams that they shouldn't lose to. They lost a couple times to the Nats. If you continue to lose to those teams, you're going to allow the Braves to hang in there, and you don't want to have the Braves hang in there and be down 1 game going into that series. That is going to be the situation for the Mets. You want to have this be a 2 or 3 game lead going into that series next week. You're up a game and a half. You got to finish them off right now. After this weekend, you got to be up 2.5 games, and you got to make it a 2 to 3 game lead by the time you meet the Braves next Friday. Because if it's a 1 game lead, the Braves play very well at home. And despite you still having DeGrom, still having Max pitching in that series, the Braves have beaten DeGrom a few times. They've beaten Max a few times. This isn't pitchers that they're new to facing. They've spent their whole lives within the division, and they know both of those players well. The Braves play extremely well at home, and just to give them the oxygen to have you guys have to come in there. And they have set up their rotation. They have switched it up too, where Strider's missed his last start. He's probably going to start some point this weekend, which will set him up to start game one of that Mets series. So they're going to have Strider. They're going to have Wright, who is probably going to be a 20-game winner for them. And then they're going to have Max Fried pitching on Sunday night. So they have their rotation set up too. It's going to be, you got to have more than a 1-game lead going into that Friday night game. And that's pretty much all I got to say about that. In terms of the Mets side, don't screw up against these bad teams like Oakland, especially against Oakland. And when you play Miami, put them away. And from there on, you go from there. But in terms of the Braves, after they lost that 4-5 that I was talking about last week, now you look at it and they found a way to win 5 in a row until the 2-game losing streak. So they're hoping not to lose 3 in a row as they go into the game tonight against Philadelphia. It'll be the second of 4 games, as I mentioned. And that's the same team that the Braves swept last week at home. As I mentioned earlier, they play very well at home. They're a little sketchy on the road. So that's going to be a dangerous series for them, as they don't want to lose 2 out of 3, which could put them away. They have to find a way to win at least 2 out of 3 of these games to at least stay within range of the Mets, who should be able to handle the Oakland Athletics. One of the big issues that they're dealing with right now is Acuna. He did miss the game last night with injury. He also missed the game tonight. They're hoping to have him back by the weekend to start on Saturday. I'm pretty sure they're going to make sure that he's definitely going to be in there for next week. But they got to get him back because he's starting to get hot. And when he gets hot, he can carry that team. And I watched the game. It was last Saturday where he had not only all 4 of the RBIs, all the runs that they scored for that game. He had a 2-run home run as well as a 2-run double. So he had all their RBIs. He also had a diving play which saved a couple runs in that game. And this is coming off the night before, where on Friday night, where they were down 2-1 in the 8th, and he hit a 2-run home run to take the lead in the bottom of the 8th. So he's starting to get hot. He's a guy that can carry their offense. So him missing a couple games, it means a lot. So they need him back on the field. And right now, I have to say, somebody that I got on last week, Kenley Jensen, since then, he has 3 games, 3 saves, 3 innings pitched, and he has not allowed a walk, a hit, or a run. So he shut me up last week, but we'll see if he can continue that, because they can't take the streakiness. This is the second time this year that he had a little slump and this slump carried on for a while. This wasn't a 1-week slump. This was something that was carrying on for about 3 weeks. So they can't take him going into that type of a slump. They need him at peak position as he goes into the playoffs, because the playoffs is not going to be a week or 2. It's going to be at least a month or so, 6 weeks. And he's going to have to be on for that whole time. He's going to have to pull Will Smith, because Will Smith did something similar last year where he was slumping. He wasn't pitching well in the regular season. He wasn't pitching badly. He still had an ERA in the 3s. His whip was okay, not great, not bad. So he's kind of pulling a Will Smith, but in the playoffs, unbelievably, Will Smith turned into freaking Mariano Rivera, because they couldn't get a hit off him in the playoffs. It didn't matter if it was against Mookie Betts. It didn't matter if it was in wherever they played, whoever they played, or whatever hitter he went up against. You couldn't stop Will Smith in the playoffs last year, and it helped the Braves with the rest of that bullpen, Tyler Matzik especially, to win the World Series. They're going to need something like that to do it again, because, they do have good starting pitchers this year. They have 4 guys who you're very confident in that can go 6, if not 7 innings. So it's not as bad as it was last year. But you can't depend on that, because in the playoffs, You have a lot of young guys. Strider never pitched. He's never been a big game starting pitcher before in the playoffs. He's never had to deal with that. Obviously, Morin is not pitching the same that he was in previous years. You have to hope he can kick it up for that. Kyle Wright is a guy, this is the first year he's actually shined. So before now, honestly, his highlight was last year, coming in out of the bullpen, pitching 4 2/3 innings, and them finding a way to win that game. And that was huge for the Braves to win the World Series. But that may have flipped him because before that, he was nothing in the playoffs. So you have a bunch of young guys that are, I don't want to say unproven because Wright did that, but they're mostly unproven for the playoffs. So they've got to make sure that their key guys are there. And they also have to make sure their bullpen is ready, because you got to have people. Matzik has to be Matzik from last year. Minter's got to be good. Kenley Jansen and Rafael Iglesias both have to be good. If those 4 guys are good, you don't have to worry about anything. I'm completely honest that those 4 guys, if those 4 guys are on, you will hardly score a run after the 6 innings. After 6, honestly, you could include the 6, but after 6 innings, and most pitchers on this roster will go 6, you're not scoring any more runs, because if Jansen's on, he's very tough to score off of. Iglesias, same thing, even more tougher than Jansen over the past year. And Matzik has already shown what he can do. And Minter has been very dominant despite maybe one slump during the middle of the year. So those 4 are really, really tough to beat when they're on. So those are the 4 main guys they got to get onto. After that, then obviously you have Dylan Lee, you have Colin McHugh, and those guys that can come in and pitch and also be good. But those main 4 guys that I mentioned, those are the guys that can win the Braves a back-to-back championship. But before we get that, we got to see if they're actually going to be getting a bye for the first round, or if they'll be playing in the first round. And that will be heavily dependent on what happens with their series this week and also next weekend versus the Mets. Moving on to another sport, boxing. We want to talk a little bit about what happened last week with Canelo Alvarez and Gennady Golovkin. In my opinion, it was a 9-3 fight, and that's with me giving Golovkin the last 3 rounds. First round was a nothing round. It could have gone either way. That doesn't really mean much to me. What matters is that this has been a very good trilogy between the 3. If you add up the rounds between all 36 rounds, I have it 19-17 Canelo. So it's been just back and forth. First fight, I had Golovkin winning 8 rounds to 4. Second fight, I had a draw. Third fight, I had Canelo winning 9 rounds to 3. But the part that was the most interesting about this is that the judges had, 2 of the judges had it 7 rounds to 5, which means that this fight, despite how one-sided I felt it was, this was 1 round away on both of their cards from being a draw. And if this fight was named a majority draw, people would have lost it. I mean, they lost it already when it was the first fight, when it was a draw, and it was definitely not a draw. This fight would have been chaos, because it would have been screwing the top dog in boxing in terms of bringing in money and revenue. It would have been, I can't even imagine what would have happened, because the announcers were acting like they bet on the fight. Well, with Canelo, with Halbert's talking about seeing if they can finish off the fight, and I think they probably had Canelo by knockout. By how are they talking? But if he ended up with a majority draw, it would have been just stunning. It would have been perfect for boxing, because that's what boxing does. I've been saying for years that boxing judges are what's going to ruin the sport. So it's been happening for years. It'll continue to happen till they finally start holding these judges accountable. So that was a good fight. It was also a good fight to just see what probably was Gennady Golovkin's last fight. It looks like could be it for him. He's 40 years old now. You obviously saw he lost of speed. He still has some pop. And that's the reason why I think both of these guys know the other one had some pop. So they didn't want to just let go, especially at this stages of both of their careers. So listen, it's one of those fights that, you know what, you just have to see it. A lot of people didn't want to see it a couple months ago, including me. As you got closer to it, you say, yeah, sure, I want to see it. But it ended the way that most people expected it would. maybe not on the scorecards, but in most boxing fans' mind, it ended the way people expected, with Canelo dominating and once again proving that he is one of the best, if not the best in the sport. But tonight, talking about boxing, you got Shakur Stevenson in a good fight today. Now, first of all, let me just first say he was the WBC and WBL junior lightweight champion, as he came in at 131.6 yesterday on the scales. The limit for that division is 130, so he is stripped of the titles and he cannot win it tonight. But he will be facing Robson Conceição, as he has a chance to win those belts tonight, as he came in at underweight, I think 129.6. So one person will be fine to try to win the fight, and the other one will be just win the titles, and the other one will be winning just trying to win the fight. As Stevenson came in overweight, he didn't try to make it after or anything. He just said he tried too hard and he worked as much as he could, but he just couldn't do it. So he obviously will be moving to 135 after this fight. And listen, I always say it's very unprofessional for a boxer to sign up to a contract he can't make. I understand that he's a growing kid. He's a young kid, so his body is growing. But maybe I'm more old school in that situation. I'm not a person that's going to talk out of two sides of my mouth. I'm not going to get on somebody like Tank for not making weight and then not get on Shakur Stevenson. I'm going to get on everybody who doesn't make weight, because that's the contract they signed up for. So with that said, he didn't make weight. He's going to be moving to 135 soon. But it should be a solid fight in Newark. I don't think, listen, they're talking about the ticket sales, talking about how big of an event, how much buzz it has. Listen, I'm near Newark. I'm near that area. I'm in that area at least once a week. It's not that much buzz. It is a slight buzz. You do see people aren't walking around the street talking about it. I'll put it that way. When Top Rank put out the fight, they scaled back the amount of seats. Now they're slowly trying to open them up. So I understand them they can put tweets out saying, yeah, they're opening up seats and they're opening up sections, but it's because you only had half the building open in the first place. So you didn't even expect it to be that much. So it was one of those situations where you're happy at least doing better than they expected, but the expectations were very low. So it is what it is, you know. It's a fight that if you're in the area, I suggest going to see it, because Shakur Stevenson, I actually think, is one of the top young fighters in the world. I think he has skills that are elite skills. I think if it's almost blasphemy to say this, but his skills in terms of hit and not be hit are probably the closest in the sport to what Floyd was when he fought. And nobody else is really on that level in terms of hit and not be hit. And he's on that top-notch level so far for his career. Now, we'll see if he can continue that as he raises the level of competition. But so far, he is on an elite level in terms of the skill of the sweet science. So I suggest going out there to see him. The tickets, I don't know if they're that high. I would have liked to make it out there. Unfortunately, I'm not able to, but I do have people that will be out there, and they'll be giving me updates on it. And obviously, I will be able to see it on TV. So if you're in the Newark area in New Jersey, go out there by the Prudential Center, see if you can get a ticket. Obviously, there are some available. And you can go and see one of the top elite talents in the sport of boxing as the young Shakur Stevenson goes against Robson Conceição. But with that said, it's another good week of sports. It's another good week of, everything. You know, in sports nowadays, you have so many things that are bad or put you down, or whether it's the Brett Favre situation or whether it's scandals all over the place. It's fun when you finally get to just enjoy sports and enjoy it for what it is, which is just competition. And people inherently just crave competition. They like to see one person against another person, whether it's one of those team versus team rivals, whether it's one of the 1-versus-1 in Canelo versus Golovkin in boxing. But it's fun to watch. It's fun to be involved in. And I'm always here to cover for you, especially New York sports recently. And Mets, Braves next week. We'll really talk about that and everything else on Pack Sports Zone. I'm your host, Peter Pac-Man Clark. Catch you next week.